In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you why everyone is going ballistic over President Trump's tweet and how one speech by the president could liberate 90 million people and reshape global order. This is not theory, not speculations, but history repeating itself right now if we're wise enough to recognize it. As I'm recording this, our compatriots inside of Iran are going on their 6th consecutive day of revolt, involving over 60 cities inside of Iran. They've made their decision and nothing can stop them. But you're not hearing about this. And there's a reason for that. Once you understand why, you understand exactly what needs to happen next. This isn't just about Iran. This is about whether we're capable of learning from history when it actually matters. Something fundamentally has shifted inside of Iran after the opposition conference in Munich last year. There's an internal dynamic gone into overdrive to liberate Iran from the foreign Islamic Ayatollah occupation. The perception of the possibility of a free Iran has changed. It's achievable. Actually achievable. Back in summer last year in Munich, the Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, consolidated leadership over the transitional government of Iran in exile, and he managed to unify the entire opposition for the first time in history. Inside of Iran, people are organizing in masses. The massive networks of the underground resistance, colonels of the Iranian army deflecting and declaring war on the Ayatollahs on Iranian soil, student groups, universities, factory workers, nurses, women, children. They're not waiting for permission. They're not asking for instructions. They know exactly which government buildings to target, which infrastructures to secure, which officials are ready to deflect, how to take down Basij bases, and what to do with their weapons. This is domestically originated and internally led. They've already made their decision. The only variable left is time. Will this take 6 months or 6 years? Will thousands die or tens of thousands? That's what hangs in the balance. Not whether it happens, but how long and how bloody, and whether the world stands with them or the Ayatollah. Now look at Iran closely. We've seen this before. The script has already been written in history. Czechoslovakia in 1968, occupied by Soviet communists. People were rising in the streets, cities liberated, Soviet tanks on the border, and America said nothing. The window of opportunity closed. Soviet tanks rolled in, and what follows was 20 more years of Soviet tyranny. Now, 20 years later, Berlin, 1987, President Reagan is standing at the Brandenburger Gate and gave his epic speech. President Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Crowds go crazy. The Soviet officials are laughing, calling it theater. 2 years later, the wall fell. 4 years later, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. That speech was the hinge point. Now, same thing in France, 1940s. It's occupied by the Nazis. Churchill speaks directly to the French resistance inside of France. He calls them the fighting spirit of France, the underground forces of freedom, the French patriots who fight the enemy on their own soil. And behind Churchill stands America. Together, they tell the opposition leader, Charles de Gaulle, stay in London, lead the resistance, we're behind you. These are not just words, but recognition, legitimacy, the promise of support. De Gaulle didn't liberate France by himself. He liberated it because the mightiest powers on earth stood behind him. One speech doesn't just inspire, it legitimizes, it signals, and it forces everybody else to choose sides. We're at the crossroads. But before we get to that historic moment, we need to understand the corruption machine, because everybody's still asking the same questions. Why is CNN not covering the protests? Why is Amnesty International not sounding the alarm bells? Why is Congress silent? Why are European leaders still hosting Islamic regime diplomats? Well, money, of course. Money. My father used to say the West is not making mistakes. They're making profits. There are brokers, middlemen who've built their empires on making deals with Islamists like the Ayatollahs. They make their money in the shadows of every single deal. Oil deals, sanction workarounds, transfer of weapons, money laundering. They buy their villas and their islands with these profits. But, and this is important, they don't stop there. They use that money to buy influence. They fund think tanks that publish papers defending engagement with the regime. They place people in academic institutions who train our next generation of diplomats in our elite universities. They cultivate politicians with one goal: to keep the status quo alive, from the State Department to the Pentagon to the European Union to the United Nations. And they own stakes in the media companies that control the narrative. And when you control information, you control public opinion. This is why everyone from the hungry European policymakers to the American big podcasters are always first to oppose anything that would actually cripple jihadist and Islamist powers. It's not a difference in principle or a misunderstanding, it's purchase. Here's what makes it truly insidious. The real elites, the legitimate business leaders, the major corporations, the institutional investors, they're being deceived too. They're told that the current arrangement is the only way to access the Iranian market. They're told, yeah, the regime is bad, we know, but its stability is necessary for business. It's a lie. Anyone with basic knowledge can tell you that Iran represents $10 to $15 trillion of legitimate economic opportunity, the world's second largest natural gas reserve, 85 million educated people in the geographical heart of the Middle East. A free Iran opens every market in that region. American companies are salivating over working with their former partners. Yes, I said former partners because before the Ayatollahs stepped in, Iran was the biggest ally and lucrative business partner of the Western nations. European industries would be backed with stable energy supplies, Israeli-Iranian normalization transforming regional trade. The real elites would make far more money from a free Iran than from the scraps that the brokers throw them. But the brokers control the information flow. They control the narrative. They make sure the real elite never sees the real calculations. The brokers need the regime to survive because that's where their power comes from. The chaos, the sanctions, the corruption. That's their business model. A free Iran destroys them. So they have built an entire infrastructure to make sure it never happens. Now you know why every major uprising in Iran from 1979 onwards, the 1999 student movement, the 2009 Green Movement, 2017, 18, 19, 2022 Women, Life, Freedom, till now has always been intentionally crushed. The brokers won, the world lost, until today. And yes, if this was Obama, the chance would be zero. Obama was the original architect of the Iran deal or nuclear deal or JCPOA or whatever you want to call it. The brokers called it the greatest $150 billion triumph. If this was Biden, the chance would be zero. He spent 4 years trying to resurrect that deal, and we know what he did to the Iranian people. He gave $6 billion to the Ayatollahs on the anniversary of the Women, Life, Freedom Revolution after the Iranian people held down the streets and protests for 12 consecutive months. And with that, he crushed the revolt, facilitated October 7th, and left the only American opposition figure who was kidnapped by the Ayatollahs and taken to Iran behind to be killed. That was my father, Jamshid Sharmat. But with Trump, we have a shot. Not a guarantee, but a shot. Trump tweeted this morning, and here's a message from the Iranian freedom fighters to the President of the United States. Thank you, President Trump, for this historic message of solidarity with us. Iran belongs to the Iranian people, not the foreign Islamic Ayatollah occupation. We thank you for your commitment to strike at the terrorist forces that have not only pledged to destroy the Iranian people, but also America. We will not stop until Iran is free. We're committed to stand in full alliance with the President of the United States and the American people. Trump's tweet has already reached a response by the Iranian people. Quick shout out to the modest expert who suggested such a meaningful statement and inspired this tweet. And yes, Trump is surrounded by conflicting interests. Yes, there are brokers in his immediate orbit pushing the old playbook. They're lashing out at him at the street, in the comments, in the media. That is expected. You can tell, by the way, that these tweets and talking points are inspired by the brokers because they mirror exactly what the Islamic regime officials are saying. Here is Larijani's tweet, for example. Here is Arafchi's tweet. Same points as some of our congressmen are making. But Trump doesn't care about lashing out. He responds to something very different. A grand gesture, the historic moment, the chance to be the president who reshaped the Middle East and made history, not the president of peace, as some brokers are desperately trying to turn Trump into Obama 2.0, offering him the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, Trump and flower power, sure. President Trump has the capacity to cut through broker narrative. When he sees the real opportunity, a free Iran as America's ally, Israel's security transformed in the region, Russia and China losing foothold in the region, when he sees those opportunities, he can make decisions that bypass all of the usual diplomatic channels entirely. And his base already understands this instinctively. They see the fight against jihadism clearly. They support Israel. They recognize that Iran is the key that makes or breaks humanity's future. And when Trump acts, they mobilize. That creates political cover that no other president has. Now, the infrastructure for this already exists. The Iranian diaspora is organized. The crown prince has legitimacy inside and outside of the country as the transitional leader to take a unified opposition from here to freedom. So the moment is now. The only thing that's missing is the recognition by the world's most powerful leader. Let me walk you through what happens when President Trump addresses the Iranian people directly. Not a statement about how great they are, not a tweet, a speech from the Oval Office broadcasted everywhere. 90 million Iranians watching it live on their cell phones. As he speaks to them, I see you, I hear you. America stands with you. First, the protests will intensify immediately. The Iranian people have been waiting for this. Remember, they were chanting at Obama, he left them hanging. They were chanting at Biden, he didn't do shit. The Iranian people don't need foreigners to tell them to rise. They need to see the biggest power on earth standing behind them. That will accelerate their plans. Second, regime officials will deflect en masse. Revolutionary Guard officers, bureaucrats, they've been calculating odds all along. They know the regime is only standing for 47 years because of foreign backing. When they see the American president publicly backing the opposition, those calculations change instantly. Third, what follows is Trump meets the Iranian diaspora leadership. That's why it's important to continue the cooperation with the transitional government and be prepared. Transitional planning begins in earnest, not secretly, publicly. That compounds legitimacy. Fourth, Congress mobilizes. There are members pounding their heads against the wall since last January, but they have been silenced by the brokers' networks. They've been waiting for political cover, and suddenly they will have it. Starlink satellites for uncensored internet, support funds, targeted sanctions on regime figures, relief for everyone else. There are tons of policies sitting in drawers just waiting for the right moment. Fifth, and this is crucial, the broker's narrative collapses. When the President of the United States addresses 90 million people and declares America's support, the media can't ignore it. The think tanks can't spin it. The diplomatic channels can't contain it. And the real elites will start asking questions. Wait, if there's a legitimate path to free Iran, why weren't we told about it? And the house of cards collapses. We have witnessed this domino effect throughout history. It exposes the con. It forces everyone to choose sides based on reality, not the curated versions that the brokers have been selling. And here's where you come in. Solidarity demonstrations are forming all over the globe. Social media influencers are making videos. Iranian diaspora communities, freedom activists, supporters of Israel who understand the regional implications. Instead of symbolic marches, we can focus every bit of that energy on one demand. President Trump addressed the Iranian people. And a lot of you are already doing that. To the Iranian diaspora, remember, put away your internal disagreements. It doesn't matter left, right, monarchist, secular, whatever. None of it matters right now. The people inside of Iran are in the streets fighting together against tyranny. Match their unity. To Israel and friends of Israel, you understand most what a free Iran means for regional stability. Ask your friend and Israel's biggest ally, President Trump, to speak directly to the Iranian people, just like your prime minister has done. This is the speech that secures Israel's future more than any military operation ever could. To the real business leaders and elites, look past of what the brokers have been telling you. A free Iran is a legitimate market worth trillions. This is your historic opportunity to score the biggest deals known to mankind. And to all of the activists and NGOs and communities who have spent years on getting here, you've built the networks. You've established credibility. You have prepared for this moment. Now convert all of this into one unified message delivered through every channel that reaches the White House. Every time you post about the uprising, and continue posting about the uprising, add this one ask to it. Tag President Trump. One speech is hope. One speech is determination. One speech breaks the broker's monopoly on information. One speech forces everyone to choose sides. One speech is how history turns. The Iranian people have already decided. Towns are being liberated. People are being shot dead. Besieged leadership is being eliminated. Police stations are being taken over. The regime's foundation is cracking. The people inside of Iran are doing their part. They're risking everything. The question is not whether they're ready. The question is, are we? Be prepared. The brokers will fight this with everything they have. Call this reckless, warn about instability, World War III. Why is America meddling in other countries' business? Bro, the jihadists are meddling in America's business. They will invoke every fear that they've been cultivating for decades to keep this regime alive. But their power depends on one thing: keeping this moment from happening. President Trump has a chance to be the president who freed Iran, expose the greatest corruption scheme known to our generation, secure Israel's future, and reshape the global balance of power with one speech. All we have to do is make sure he knows the opportunity is real. I'm Giselle Sharmat, and if this video helped you understand what is going on inside of Iran and how to help the uprising, share this with your friends and your community. Subscribe to my channel. There's a lot more that we will dismantle. And until then, support the freedom fighters.